From John's Gospel, the first chapter, come these words. Beginning of what will actually be 2 weeks in which we hear stories about people responding to the call of Jesus to follow. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming towards him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you come to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." And Nathanael then replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." So ends the reading of God's holy word.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we listen to this account from John's Gospel of those early days when you began to call people to follow. That call has continued through the ages, continuing today, right in our lives, daily. May we listen carefully to the story and even more carefully to your voice as it speaks to us and invites us to come and see. This we ask in your holy name. Amen. I often find stories about how famous people got their start to be very intriguing. It can be fascinating, for me anyway, to learn about journeys that led from obscurity to fame and fortune. And perhaps one reason I'm so intrigued by the stories is that they, at some level, give me hope. Hope that big things can come from little starts. Maybe even you and me. Of course, it's also been true that beginnings weren't always humble, or at least not just humble. Some beginnings were a little sleazy. I want to invoke a name now, a name that can split this congregation down the middle faster than the names Trump and Clinton. And that name is John Deere. So with some trepidation, I want to report that the venerable Mr. Deere got his start in Illinois making a steel plow that wouldn't cake up in the clay. That was his genius. So far, I'm safe. But John Deere was born in Rutland, Vermont. Why did he move to the Midwest? To avoid bankruptcy in Vermont. He was on the run. Nothing runs like a deer. We're running from bankruptcy. Next week, if I think of it, I'll dig up something on international harvest. Another example, though, Steve Jobs of Apple computer fame. Turns out Steve was something of a conniving kid back in the 1970s. He got his start finding ways to hack into phone systems so as not to pay long-distance fees. Next thing you know, the little thief is a big cheese. And even the religious world has its unseemly past. At least part of the reason that our good friends down at St. Bridget's in Bloomfield don't worship with our good friends at St. Peter's in Bloomfield is because a long time ago, a big fat man named Henry wanted an annulment from his wife Catherine, and he wasn't about to wait for any old pope to give it to him. So he started his own church, hence the split between Roman Catholic and Episcopal. Well, like our beloved potato, a lot of things emerged from the muck and the mire. Jesus himself may have had an unsullied divine birth with a multitude of the heavenly host, but a whole lot of other things started with a lot more dirt than divinity, which gives me hope. If God can use only the perfect, then we're probably all in a wicked mess. But God has been engaging the proud and the peevish and the prejudiced and the petty since the very outset. Philip comes to Nathanael and essentially says, Phil, I found the chosen one. And without missing a beat, Nathanael counters with, what? Out of Nazareth? Be serious. We don't know what beef Nathanael had with Nazareth. Maybe Nazareth had won the sectional soccer title for 7 years in a row. Maybe Nazareth was a horribly red city or blue city or some other color city. But for some reason, Nathanael had a bug in his bonnet about Nazareth. But even that didn't torpedo God's plan. Prejudice or not, Nathanael was able to hear the call to follow even Jesus of Nazareth. And the church took another big step forward. Hearing the call is not easy, and responding to it is even harder. When I see a 1-800 number show up on my phone, I don't answer it. That's not a call I respond to, because it's bound to be a sales pitch, and it couldn't be bothered. Sales calls like that, when they show up with an 800 number, are easy to spot. It's really easy to spot when a salesperson drives up in a big van with a company name on the side. But what about the call of Jesus? Do we always recognize that when it comes our way? And even if we do recognize some kind of invitation from Christ, can we push through our fears and our blinders enough to respond? Okay, this is something of a side. Hopefully it will relate later. But I want to reveal another pet peeve I have regarding one particular social convention. And that is invitations that at the bottom say, regrets only. Now, I may be very small about this whole thing, or very petty, but this is my opinion. If I don't want to go to whatever it is I'm invited to, why do I have to call and justify why I won't be attending? It puts me on the spot. It can't be a whole lot of fun for the host either. So instead of regrets only, why not yeses only? And in that case, the host or the hostess would only be receiving calls from people in the affirmative. And they would have that distinct joy of hearing in each case why somebody really wants to come. What a thrill for the one throwing the party. Jesus doesn't ask for regrets only. He leaves it to us. No browbeating, no shaming. The choice is ours. The choice was the disciples. But what makes it even sweeter is that it's not a once and for all choice. It's kind of like Publishers Clearinghouse. The invitations just keep coming. Down at the Cobblestone Springs Retreat House near Dundee, they've been offering various programs for years, one of which is called guided meditation, twice a month, I think. And it's an opportunity to cultivate peace and relaxation. I've known about it for years. I'm on the board down there. But I guess I was never, attuned to it, or I was too busy. Well, finally, this past week, I went down for one of those guided meditations. You'd think I'd discovered sliced bread. It was glorious. I could still be sitting there. Some things are sitting right in front of us. You just don't see them the first 65 times. Jesus is the initiator. And he doesn't stop initiating. He doesn't stop asking. It was interesting that Philip, in this passage, mistakenly tells Nathanael, "We have found the chosen one." That's not really true. Jesus found Philip. Jesus is the initiator. Back then and now, our egos have a way of distorting things. Look what I did, rather than look what found me. I suppose it's a lot easier to think of ourselves as the pursuers and the doers rather than Christ. And maybe it's a little bit uncomfortable to think of ourselves being pursued. Maybe it's too close to feeling like we're stalked. But God isn't a stalker. God does love us enough to never give up, however. And there is that quality of holy persistence, I believe. And if the story of Nathanael is any indication, there's a whole lot of holy joy when someone responds to that invitation in the positive to come and see. I see a few people in the course of a year doing my pastoral visits, very often stopping without invitation. And I'm almost always received warmly. But one thing I've noticed sometimes when I do stop in to see someone, maybe that hasn't been here in a while, I feel like they need to explain why they haven't been here in a while. And the truth is, half the time I can't remember when they were there and when they were there. I have enough just to make sure I'm here. So I can't keep attendance in my head. I don't think God keeps count either. God just keeps on inviting us to come and see, whether we ever happen to get to worship or not. To come and see what new life is available to us in Christ, what deep gifts of the Spirit exist that are available in any circumstance of life. Jesus is the initiator. But we have our part to play, there's no question about that. It's not big, but it's important. Neil Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins flew 245,000 miles up to the surface of the moon. But Armstrong still had to take that last little historic step. And what a shame it would have been if Neil had stayed up in the lunar module, refusing to take that fateful step, that one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. We have our small steps to take. Not usually in outer space, but into places that might at first seem almost as forbidding as outer space. Dr. Martin Luther King once made this remark. He said, "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase." And whoever sees the whole staircase? Years ago, staircase brought this to mind, but years ago I remember watching the really cool kids down at Bristol Mountains Ski Resort coming down from the second floor wearing their ski boots, sliding down the stairs like a machine gun. And they landed ever so deftly on the floor. And I was impressed. I didn't admit it. I was like, wow. But I also thought, you guys are crazy. It's one thing to careen down a hill and maybe land in snow, but you're going to land on concrete. They didn't take it one step at a time. And it really is one step at a time, one invitation at a time. And like Nathanael, we don't have to be perfect. We need not even catch the invitation the first 12 times. What is important, I think, is an open, receptive heart. A heart willing to come and see. Even when we can't maybe see much beyond the end of our nose. But we know who can. So may we all be blessed as we follow, as we come and see.